Welcome everyone to Agile Talks by Agile Gurus. I'm your host Rahul Kataria, and today we're going to be talking with our speakers, Reha Malik from Virginia, United States, and we have Awais Sheikh for the first time on our podcast today from Canada. Hey guys,
Hello.
how are you guys doing? Hey Awais.
Hey Rahul.
All right. So today, the topic for today's episode is we're going to be talking about the lessons learned, the challenges, the pros and cons from working remotely for most of the companies that I went virtual and online. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start reading out the questions that people have sent us, and then I'm going to kind of, you guys, tag team. Yeah?
Sure.
All right. So it has been, 3 or 4 months since this COVID thing happened, right? And a lot of companies have decided to go completely virtual now. So in your experience, what are the initial challenges that you guys saw when you first went online and teams started to work remotely? And then maybe how did you overcome those challenges? So Awais, I'm going to start with you.
So I think initially to start off the bat, I still remember the day here in Canada. It was 11th March. When we just got a directive that it is optional for people to go and work remotely from tomorrow. So what we did as an organization is all the delivery team, the entire PMO team, we got together. Agile coaches, the SDEs, RDs, Scrum Masters, and we just asked the Scrum Masters to work with the team to get the working agreements going on how they would collaborate, what would be the ways of working. Fortunately enough for us, we had good communication channels already set up in terms of Zoom, Slack. So we didn't have many infrastructure or from a technological perspective any new onboarding to done. That was the positive aspect. And then by the end of the day, we got the working agreements. We shared all the working agreements along with communication channels on a shared space. After that, it was more about everyone collaborating. Most important thing is every team has an open Zoom channel, which is shared across all the different 22 teams that we have in the organization right now. So for any asynchronous communication that for any dependencies, anything like that. People just hop onto the Zoom channel, other team members are notified and the communications happen. I think the most important part is ceremonies, doing remotely, I think everyone is fine with. But the coffee talks and the water cooler talks, which people usually miss, being remote. I think that's taken care of with the open Zoom channels and, a lot of communication happens that way.
So when you first started this, like with
Mhm.
all the different things that you started implementing, what were like some key challenges that you faced with that?
Prior to that, the structure of the organization being we had distributed teams and then we had remote teams. So communication was always an issue. I would say luckily for us after this COVID, the communication has improved a lot, and we have dedicated 2 channels of communications: Slack, Zoom. People try to stay away from emails only when decisions are made or certain key points are done. We get onto emails. Apart from that, I think streamlining communication was the number one winning aspect for us, and that solved a lot of challenges within the organization. And 3 months into the COVID situation now, we have seen the throughput has increased tremendously for all the teams across the board in all the 2 continents that we are in, all the 4 different countries that we have our distributed teams in. And this is to the point that organization is also thinking about a permanent work from home policy.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, so the management sees the impact and how the teams have been agile and actually taken this opportunity to work towards something more valuable.
Yeah.
And that's where we are seeing all the good communication, good throughputs, and today only the message was shared with us from the management that we are at pre-COVID level in terms of revenue. So that's a big win for the organization.
Very nice. Yeah, thank you, Wish, for sharing that. I'm gonna ask Rhea the same question: the challenges and what did you guys do to overcome those challenges?
My personal experience has been that COVID has actually put not only my organization, but the other coaches have been in contact with and my peer group. It's put everybody in overdrive, in a sense of an overdrive when it comes to virtual collaboration, right? That was the same situation with us as well. While in the pre-COVID times in office, there was a lot of emphasis put on collaboration, on working co-located, and Agile puts a lot of emphasis on these practices. In any organization which is Agile driven, you tend to notice that they put a lot of emphasis on co-location. The tool sets we use are kind of adapted so that, we're in a co-located place. You'll see smart boards for collaboration. You'll see whiteboards, walls covered in whiteboards. So I think the biggest challenge for us was to replicate that in-person environment into a virtual space, right? So I think it put a lot of the infrastructure in the overdrive. A lot of organizations have experienced it. The single sign-on policies, the VPNs, solidifying all of the collaboration tools, the meeting tools you use, whether it's a WebEx or a MS Teams or whatever you're using, Zoom, Skype. I think it's put a lot of these infrastructure decisions into overdrive, right? Because they have to be prioritized to support remote working. The other thing which we've seen is people coming up with, it was a big challenge of how do we replicate that in-person environment virtually? How do we allow for people to collaborate with each other while they are not sitting next to each other, right? So it's put a lot of emphasis on these tools which are available out there. My organization particularly, we are very, we try and look at more cost-effective methods when it comes to tools, because we don't want to invest in a lot of tools. There's just so many out there. So I think it's put a lot of people into the spaces. Can we use Confluence? Can we use MS Teams? Can we all work on the same document at the same time? And similar to Awais, it's been amazing, but we've seen a lot of lift since we've gone virtual. Collaboration has been better. People are working more hours, even though somehow they're home and they're with their families, but the efficiency has really gone up. And it's partly because everybody does want to show value, right? You are home, how are you going to show value? So it's allowed for people to approach work in a different way or fashion, make it a little more agile and limber, if I might say so, right? The work hours are different. So how do you account for those work hours and allow for collaboration tools? So that's something we've put a lot of emphasis on. That was our initial challenge as a company. I'm part of an organization which was going through an agile transformation phase. So there was not a single system of record, if you might say, for record keeping, right? And we were trying to onboard Jira. There were teams which were working out of Excel, and it was not similar. So the virtual setup has actually put everything in an overdrive, right? Everybody is realizing the value of having a single system of record. People are now onboarding onto the tool way faster because they're able to see the value it drives. So it's actually been, for lack of better words, a better change for us, right? We've seen big jumps overall.
Interesting. So, this is very interesting. Both of you guys have seen success versus, a lot of people were thinking when we'll go on remote and, do remote work for all the employees, it will be even harder to not just communicate, but because, Agile has always kind of emphasized, co-location and in-person discussions. And now going remote looks like people are seeing benefits of that, right? So not just correct me if I'm wrong. Both of you guys said that it's not that we have kind of progressed from the initial challenges, but also seen success way more than when we used to be in person. Is that right?
We have, personally for me, I let Awais talk for his example, but that has come with some changes we have had to put in, like, right? with a lot of agile spaces, a lot of agile coaches, you're right, the emphasis is on co-location. But I think the biggest challenge there has been for Scrum Masters and coaches and product owners is how do we replicate the in-person environment and make it workable in a remote setup. And I think that's what contributed to the success.
Gotcha.
Awais, what do you feel?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Reha. And I think a lot has to do with the, I like the word that you put in, overdrive. A lot of emphasis on, communication and moving ahead. And I think one of my experiences that I have seen is, a lot of informal meetings, which were not required, are really streamlined now.
Absolutely.
So, previously that was a huge loss of time in terms of, all those unnecessary meetings, and they being streamlined. It's a huge value addition.
Very nice. Awesome. Thank you guys for that. So, all right, let me jump into the second question. And Rhea, let me start with you, and then I'll go to Awais with this. So, have you guys approached ceremonies any differently than you guys used to? Not just ceremonies, like anything that you guys did that put you in that success zone now?
Mm-hmm. Yes, to answer your question, yes, we have. I'm going to build up on Oasis' point. I think what he said was very, very interesting and very relevant. And it was around the meetings, right? A lot of meetings previously, which were just on the calendar, being remote has forced people to kind of start thinking of the efficiency. How do you efficiently manage time, right? And that has put, again, the focus, the beam has been on meetings, because that's one thing which really fills up all of our calendars, right? So it's put a new lens on it. Most of the agile teams, if you've been part of any transforming space, you will notice, and you must have heard the same story everywhere, people complaining that agile brings with it too many meetings, right? We've all heard it. There are too many meetings. We don't have time to work. So I think it's been one of the things which I try and coach Scrum Masters and product owners and teams on, is to really look at their meetings in a different lens. One of the major changes we've made to the ceremonies has been the grooming sessions. 2-hour groomings are very common, or planning sessions, which were stretched longer. What we've done is we've created something called a mini grooming now. And what that essentially is we've kind of given a different flavor to the grooming sessions. Instead of the entire team coming together and grooming as a one giant piece for an hour or 2 hour, what we've done is we have created these planned or sprinkled the grooming throughout the week in 30-minute sessions. And what's that done for the teams? It's helped them have that attention, that span of attention. It's helped them narrow that down. In the virtual setup, a lot of us have a lot of distractions. We're home, we're with the kids, you're looking after elderly, or you're just looking after yourself. And in the mental space, I personally cannot, my span of concentration is very small. Rahul, you've worked with me. After 40 minutes, I'm looking out of the window, I cannot concentrate. So it's again building that empathy into our teams. And what we've noticed and out of experience realized is we've tried to shorten the meeting times, right? So grooming has been one. The other ceremony which we've introduced, or the change which we've seen, is something which I've seen teams call a jamboree. That's a term. I've not coined it, my teams have. And very similar to what its meaning in English is, it's just a big giant party, right? It's a party with no meaning. In our case, what it is teams which were working on any new development items, right? Previously, when we were in an in-person setting, you could just turn your seat around and talk to people. Or you could just walk, a few steps and the tester could talk to the developer and talk to the analyst, and you get that sense of, community working together, like a team working together. Again, coming back to that initial mindset of how do we create that in-person environment and replicate that to a virtual session, we created something called the jamborees. And what they essentially are these small focus groups. So whenever you have a user story, and it's been defined and it's been groomed, the developers and the testers are literally sitting together. So after the development has been done, the testing is actually a group effort, right? So they're testing it, they're finding the issue, they're fixing it on the fly, and they're marking it done, right? They're marking it ready for the product owner and just pushing it out. And what this is doing is it's bringing those meetings of reviews down so that the sprint reviews are becoming shorter because it's already being tested and verified by the product owner. We're seeing a lot more efficiency, lower defect rates in those products which are bringing in the jamborees. And even with the mini groomings, it's been a similar approach for us. But these are the two major ceremonies we really gone in and with our tools and tried to redo and restructure them.
And you have seen like big success just with these two at least. Okay, very nice. Thank you. Awais, same question.
So I think I'll leave apart grooming. I think Rhea covered it really well. A couple of changes that we have done is on the stand-ups. So, as directed by Scrum, daily stand-ups. What we have changed to for some of the teams is, we are doing stand-ups now twice a day. So 2-3 hours before the end of the day, and an hour into the day, and that has really helped the teams to be on the point and really communicate, not only end of the day, but throughout the day. And just as a part of my question, I'll cover, the comment by Eduardo on the chat. One of the things that, I really looked into is for developers, it is really important to get in the zone. And the research suggests that it takes them around 30 to 40 minutes to get in the zone, right? Wherein they're completely focused and they are on to, they are in their zone of development. So, one of the suggestions by us was for the teams to block off 2 or 3 hours of blocks on the calendar for themselves, and wherein the developers, they can focus. It depends on the team what time of the hours they really like, whether it's in the afternoon or whether it's in the morning, and then it's being spread across. So the calendars are really respected. No one will ever try to get time on the calendar, and that has been a huge success. So when I talked about the actual productivity and throughput being higher, that has been one of the major success stories for us, wherein the developers, they are really getting the time to just get things done, being there, being in the zone, being focused, and delivering value throughout the day.
Very nice. All right. Thank you, Awais, for that. So with all that you guys just mentioned, I know like a lot of people are taking different steps towards, this success zone or success point. Do you guys have any suggestions for Scrum Masters and product owners, or even team members for that sake, that like key pointers that they can even do now to get to that point where, these pain points of being remote are kind of removed?
My suggestion, Rahul, is going to be for Scrum Masters and for product owners is going to be to look at your look at your ceremonies and look at the process flow with a different lens. I said it before. We have to bring in empathy into this whole process. We have to look at it. The problem with Agile is, even though the name suggests we're supposed to be Agile and the word Agile means flexible, a lot of the coaches are very rigid in their approach, right? We have to change that. It is about time you start questioning the value meetings are bringing. It is about time you start questioning the process, how it is. Why are we doing things a certain way? Is there a better way to do it? Revisit your working agreements. We've said that before in a few of our podcasts before. Is it still working? Core hours, are they still working? That's one of the things I've asked my product owners and Scrum Masters to do, is to look at all of their ceremonies in a different lens. Can we do certain meetings a different way? Awais brought up a great point. They're putting them, they're introducing another stand-up at the end of the day. It's not technically a stand-up, it's a checkpoint. It's that opportunity where you're giving people to talk to each other. And I think it's a great concept. I almost took that down away, so I'm going to take it back to my teams if they need it. By the way, great suggestion. So it's about time when coaches and Scrum Masters started visiting the status quo and started questioning it, bringing value to your stand-ups and the format of your stand-ups. Do we need, to do that round robin again? Is there a different lens we can approach it by, right? How are we surfacing our impediments? So all of those things are some ways which I would suggest Scrum Masters to start looking by. Alicia, she put up an important point about working agreements. You visit them and you revisit them again. Yes, keep revisiting them. And I think in a normal context, you would revisit them every 6 months or whenever you would have a new team member join, or a change in the structure of the team. But I would, yes, to Alicia's point, revisit it maybe once every couple of months or once every month right now, because things are drastically changing. People are going through a lot at home and even emotionally, right? So it's
Yeah.
important for us as Scrum Masters to wear a different hat. I always say Scrum Masters need to be mothers, fathers, older brothers, grandmothers. So it really depends on what hat your team needs at that point. But revisit, find a different lens to look at things now.
Yeah, and a great point that you brought up, Rhea, and that kind of ties back to Eduardo's question too about too many meetings. When you're doing these meetings and it feels like there are too many meetings, ask like what value is that meeting providing, and see if you can make changes based on the value that you actually need out of that meeting, right? So thank you, Rhea, for that. Always, same question. What are some of the tips and suggestions you would provide or you would give out for Scrum Master, product owner, and team members?
Uh, I think just building upon what Ray has said, one of the very important thing is, there's no one size fits all kind of a solution, right? Every team behaves differently. And, Ray, I really like the analogy, like, Scrum Masters being like, parents. And that's what I see, being father of two kids, and, both behave completely differently. And that is what I have seen teams do. Teams behave differently, individuals behave differently. The important fact is, thing that we need to keep in our minds is, present them the options and respect the autonomy of the team on what they really like. Some teams, they don't like stand-ups twice a day. So it's not a mandate. It's an option if they want to choose it. And again, we have to be agile. We have to be flexible. So try it on for a sprint. If it doesn't work, move on, get on to the
Yeah.
next idea, right? Try it on, and then, iterate over it, try out new things. And at some point of time, you find the groove. And, before you know, that's not working anymore. So we need to be creative again and
That's right.
look for different options and different solutions which are out there. A great way to do that is, within the organization, talking within the community itself, the community of Scrum Masters, right? The community of POs. Get involved with different agile communities, right? That helps to bring in new ideas, new ways of doing. Try it out. Just inspect, adapt, and move ahead.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Awais, for that. Great point coming back to the empathy, showing empathy to people and
Mhm.
everyone reacting differently. So you need to make sure you figure out what people want, what team want, and be with them in this time, I guess. And it's not just this time, I guess it's like this probably would become the new norm. We don't know that, right? A lot of companies, like I saw the other day, the news from Twitter that they're saying
Mhm.
they are going to go remote permanently, right? So this will become the new norm. So I guess people would have to really be agile this time,
Mhm.
not just say we are agile and still do waterfall.
Yeah.
All right, so that kind of brings us to the end of the podcast. I still do have one more question. So a lot of people are are taking safe classes, right?
Mhm.
And safe used to kind of emphasize the importance of being in person, co-location, all those things. Now with all this going on, when Reha and Awais, when you teach your classes, so Awais that you taught one like last week in leading safe,
Mhm.
do you guys have you guys seen any different in this new version of safe, with being online, or do you guys actually talk about the practical implementation and real life examples about how being online is impacting what we should be looking at and not just playing by the book?
Yeah, we definitely talked about that, and I'll take this question in two parts. So one was the training has, it has evolved. So now instead of doing icebreakers, uh, throughout the training, we did some eye exercises, and that helped a lot. It had a very good feedback from people, because it's challenging to stare at the screen continuously for 8 hours, right? So we
Right.
used to take break every 30 minutes, do some eye exercises. Those happen to be quite a good ice breaking exercises, and something that people have experienced for the first time, right? So that was really interesting, and sharing real-time experiences, and even safe classes, they're all about it. It's not about any trainer going in and preaching something. It's about more about the experiences coming together, and sharing from what's working out there. And at the end of the day, that's being agile, right? What's working, pick up the format and scale it. And that's pretty much even what we do in our classes.
Yeah. Thank you, Wes. Rhea, same question. Um, do you guys pivot from the book and teach people that not just to play by the book and show some real life examples?
Oh, absolutely. Two of the people here, they've been to my classes.
Oh, okay.
In Rahul, they will tell you. I always tell my students and whoever is attending my classes, I'm training. Agile means being flexible. This is a framework. Safe is a framework. Scrum is a framework. Kanban is a framework, right? They are meant to be guardrails. They are meant to be guiding guardrails for you. The adaptation is going to vary from organization to organization. I'm an SBC. I just had a virtual PI planning, which just got over this past Friday with the final readout. That was spread over 2 weeks. That was not a traditional, even a 3-day session with Safe is now suggesting with a remote format. We literally spread it over 2 weeks. We had pre-working sessions, we had a kickoff one day, we had exercises one day, and we were meeting because they were 3 arts which were planning simultaneously, and they're part of a bigger solution train. It was all happening simultaneously. So we had a lot of exercises happening. We were giving time for the RTEs to come back, take a breather, recalibrate their notes across the arts. We were then going into the next exercise and again giving people time to breathe and recalibrate data. It was spread, and the feedback we've had, and none of this, by the way, is suggested anywhere by Safe, right? This was something which we literally just got down on the whiteboard and just drew it out. How are we going to do it? How are we going to get everybody together and plan without putting people into 4 or 5 hour long meetings, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about finding the value. I always tell people, whenever you're putting a meeting in, I refuse to accept meetings which do not have an agenda. They do not have expected outcomes. What are you trying to get out of it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the same format we approached planning with, is what were we trying to get out of each exercise or breakout session? Have it very clearly written down, and we did it. And we still had people telling us, oh, we needed more time. And this is after we gave them 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So these are just some of the ways which I suggest and teach people. And when I start my class, I always tell people, you've not paid me, or you've not paid Agile Gurus for me to take you through these 500 slides.
Yeah.
People are educated, people are competent, people who are working, right? You can go through those slides on your own. You don't need me to go through those slides. You can read, right? And you can go on the internet and get help. The reason people take classes from us, and the reason people would want to pay extra money, is so that we can share those experiences, like Away said, right? Bring those war stories out, share with you our approach. And my approach has always been, use this as a framework. Take it. You cannot pick up the Safe framework and put it on top of your organization. It's never going to work. You have to take what works well. For some organizations and for some portfolios, a simple Scrum of Scrums is all you need from Safe in totality.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to worry about trains. You don't have to worry about anything. You just need people to talk to each other, right? And just do that. It's an expensive framework. It's the same thing with Scrum and with Kanban. Learn what is the best practices. The way Away suggested about stand-ups, that's not something which is suggested in the Scrum guide, right? They've tried to fine-tune it to work in their own environment.
Yep.
And he was absolutely right. Every team is different, and we need to just approach every implementation very, very differently.
Yeah.
That's why you need these coaches like us.
Absolutely right. So no, a great tip by both of you guys. Just don't just play by the book. I mean, the Safe framework is there to help you understand, a big picture, but then take things from that work for you, and then modify and change according to what's going on in your company, in your organization, right? So that brings us to the end of our podcast today, guys. To summarize, I guess, If you're in a Scrum team, Agile team, if you're a Scrum Master, product owner, team member, just be empathetic with people and try to understand their situation that they're going through right now. They're at home, a lot of things are going on, so just be empathetic. And when you have meetings, so a lot of people do ask that question. Now they have too many meetings, right? And sometimes those too many meetings are helpful. Sometimes they're just overburdened, overwhelming, and they're just overkill. So you got to ask that question: that are these meetings providing any value to you, right? And if not, let's revisit them, and then revisiting the norms, every month or two. That would be very helpful. So Rehan, Awais, thank you very much again, and thank you everyone who attended this podcast today. Our next podcast, next episode, that'll be next Tuesday. We are targeting working on user stories, so that would be a two-part, part one and part two. We'll get into details of that, and then if you have more topics and questions or comments, if you have any suggestions, feel free to send it my way, rk@myagilegurus.com. And Awais and Rhea, thank you very much again. Do you guys have any last minute comment?
It was a pleasure. No, it was very fun. Awais, it was great partnering with you. I think you brought in some great feedback, some great lessons.
Yeah.
Thank you, Reha. Thank you, Awais. Thank you, Reha. All right. I will see you guys next week. Thank you, guys.